And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with Michael Brown, author of Future Events, A Prophecy of Coming Times. Michael, where do people get this book?
Well, it's available on Amazon. We sell it also at our in our bookstore, spiritdaily.com, and local bookstores can get it certainly quickly at request. But it's also on Kindle.
Excellent. We're talking about how some people believe UFOs and ETs could be demonic. A lot of people believe that.
I think there are a lot of reasons why that can be. I just like to quickly backtrack and say that at the apparitions in 1846 I mentioned at La Salette, France, September 19th, it had been stated by the Virgin Mary that the seasons will be altered, the earth will produce nothing but bad fruit. At the same time that you had that climate change, it said the demons of the air, together with the Antichrist, will perform great wonders on earth and in the atmosphere, and men will become more and more perverted, and it goes on from there. You look back at the Middle Ages that I said all those major events occurred, including bubonic plague, climate change, and other natural disasters. And there were times when, like, a UFO would appear, and a bishop of the diocese would go out and exorcise it, and it would fall away. It would disappear. When you have a phenomenon, not all of them, I'm just by any means, but I'm saying that a lot of UFOs remind you of the spirit lights in seances back in the spiritualist upsurge in the 19th century. And you'll see cases whereby not only does the alien or aliens look frightening and very much like classical descriptions in voodoo of demons, but also that there's this smell of sulfur, which is, a classic trait. And when I look at, like, abductions, alien abductions, I note that the majority of the people who've had that experience were terrified by it and were left with lingering fears, which is not really a great effect. So I just think, George, there's too many of these to be an extraterrestrial invasion. I mean, so many people have had these events occur, and I believe have had, in many cases, these events occur. But there is a spiritual underpinning or overarching factor that's at work here, and all too often it's not a good one.
Let's go to the phones. Let's go to west of the Rockies. Let's start with Michael in Tombstone, Arizona. Hey, Michael, welcome.
Hey, Mr. Norrie, how you doing this evening?
Wonderful, thank you.
Mr. Michael, I was just going to ask a simple question here. Is anybody have any answers? Why do they call it the Spanish flu? You referred to it, that's originated in Fort Riley, Kansas.
That's right.
And it spread around the world here. And how do you know that wasn't a pandemic? Because they were monkeying around with stuff, right? And stuff. And like I say, this thing killed more people in America and all around the world than all the bullets and bombs in the First World War. And the First World War was an unfinished conflict. And it didn't finish until 1945.
Well, you're exactly right. A lot of people think it originated in the United States at an Army base, and this is, again, in the midst of warfare. And the reason they call it the Spanish flu is because most countries put a blackout on news. They didn't want they didn't want the enemy to know exactly how many people were dying in their country, because that would give the enemy an advantage. And so there was a news blackout, except in Spain. And so it looked like Spain had the outbreak when really it had no more of an outbreak, and perhaps even less than other countries, including the United States. So you're correct in that.
It's really a misnomer to call it the Spanish flu, isn't it?
Very much so. That's you could call it the Midwestern American flu if you want. But even then, there are some people who think that it may have originated while we saw it break out in America, that it could have originated again in Asia, just like the Great Black Death did in the 1300s, in the High Middle Ages. So, and again, you're talking about truly major events when you're killing 25 to 33% of the population.
Was it created biological?
Back then, I have to doubt that. And again, when we go back as far as the Middle Ages, they didn't have anywhere near that type of technology. And when you go back further to like the first century when there were plague outbreaks, again, they didn't have that type of capability. But these plagues do tend to go along with major other events or looming events like what we're facing in our own time, in our own day. So once again, I think they're a sign of the times, and they're an indication, a warning, whatever you want to call them, of more to come.
Tell me about the cover of your book, Future Events.
Well, we chose that cover. It shows basically the northern lights, the aurora borealis, kind of this fire falling from the sky over Manhattan. Because, as I said in the first part of your show, the great sign at Fatima ended up being an aurora borealis in 1938, 1939. And so I'm just taking on the cover, taking off after the fact that I think something even greater will be seen, this time more centrally located above a place like New York in an especially pronounced way. And so I don't know what a great sign coming is going to be. That's something that was prophesied at Medjugorje and elsewhere. So we're just trying to kind of come to terms with what would be a great sign that everyone would notice, that would grab our attention, and would announce the onset of some of those events in the secrets of Medjugorje, which is the fulfillment of Fatima, Portugal. So I think that we are going to see something occur that causes us to have fear of fire falling from the sky, but not fire itself.
Let's go to Joe, Long Island, New York, talking about New York. Hey, Joseph.
Yeah, I have like two quick questions and then a longer comment. My first question for Mike is the people that do talk to Mary, either pray the rosary formally or talk to her informally, are they looking for guidance or just to confide in Mary, or are they also hoping for like maybe a personal revelation for them for their own lives?
I think both. I think that often they're looking for guidance. They're looking for, some type of an insight, just like they gain insights into what's going on in the world. More importantly, more germane to individuals is what could unfold in their own lives. So, yes, I think that often that's the case. Looking for direction and often getting it. I might add, often getting it. I know that was the case with me.
Question 2, Joe, go ahead.
Okay. The overconfidence of the wicked, they don't think they're going to get paid back. And listening to the last show, it was interesting what Glenn was saying. He was saying two things, that people are kind of getting suckered into being primal and, murder for murder. But then he said something I slightly disagree with. He said that we have great immunity, we have great brain power, and we should not be tempted as a people to be augmented with augmented reality. But I also think that people, even if they don't have this great brain power, should not be attacked should not have to defend themselves against people that are coming at them to do this to them. They shouldn't have to say, well, I have enough on my own where I don't need to do this, And I do think there's a big difference between the plague of the Middle Ages and now. I think it's way worse now because the people that perpetrated this crime of this injection, this wicked injection with nanoparticles and so on, are risking their soul and maybe going to hell, where the people that died in the Great Plague, as many as they were innocent of crimes such as this, which is did not go to hell because of dying younger.
A lot of comments there. I didn't hear a question there, Michael. Did you?
No, I guess I'd comment and say I agree with aspects of that, and I don't know if this was an intentional release right now with this with the current pandemic, but I do believe it came from a laboratory. I do believe it's concocted with human hands.
Yep.
Whether
I agree.
Accidentally or not, I don't know. I guess the reason I'm skeptical it was released accidentally is because it created such carnage in China itself. They were out there, if we remember the news clips, with all these steam shovels trying to frantically build new hospitals. I don't know why you'd do that to your own country. You're kind of weakening it, but who knows? And I think most chilling about all of this is that we can do that, and worse, we can target specific ethnic groups, and or they can, and so yeah, it's certainly something to be aware of and be tuned into.
They were disinfecting the streets yesterday, so something else is popping up.
There's something going on right now.
Yeah.
There's something. We talk to a lot of people. We have this website, spiritdaily.com, every day with spiritual news, in some cases paranormal stuff, supernatural stuff, and so forth, as well as current events, signs of the times. And we speak to a lot of people, and there's a lot of coughing on the line. There's a lot of respiratory distress. There's something that is not technically being called COVID that seems to be circulating. And George, this is amazing to me because back in 2016, there was a preacher in Africa who basically he has a mega church there, and Mandakiwa is his name, and he basically foresaw exactly what we're seeing, what would occur with the pandemic, and he said that it wouldn't just stop with the first wave, that there would be wave after wave of this occurring. Again, are we seeing something that is still under the radar that's transgressing currently? This guy said, again, in 2016, he said, imagine sitting and watching TV and seeing millions and millions die, thousands in one city in one day. And he indicated it would come from like the sea, a seafood market in Wuhan, perhaps, or near that laboratory. Plagues and calamities will come with this time, this other mystic said, plagues and calamities to indicate mortality in some places, and very much a part of it. I do think that right now there's something else going on, and I'm not sure it's being hidden from us. I think they don't understand what it is that's going on, just like with UFOs. I don't know if it's a cover-up or a cover-up of a cover-up. In other words, sometimes the government covers up things because it just doesn't know and doesn't want to acknowledge that.
Let's go to Thomas in La Jolla, California. Hey, Tom.
Hi, George. I want to thank you and your staff for the miracle of Coast to Coast.
You are welcome. How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, it was beautiful, beautiful. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Sure did.
Fabulous, yeah. I give thanks for Coast to Coast, and I also give thanks to every man, every woman in the audience, and blessings to every single one. And, Michael, thank you for great information. I wanted to ask about, a comment and then a question. And my comment is, in Mexico, the Mayan apparition of the miracle of the Virgin of Guadalupe is even bigger, way bigger, than Fatima in Mexico and Central America. And I was wondering if you would be willing to comment on the miracle of the Virgin of Guadalupe. There was a church raised on the site. Mary spoke to the peasant, Juan Diego, and gave a lot of information, but it inspired the conversion to the faith of many people in Mexico and Central and South America. And I was wondering if you were willing to speak about that.
Sure. I mean, it's something that occurred back in the 16th century in December of 1531. I've been there, I think, 2 or 3 times. And you're exactly right. Not only built a church there, a huge basilica that holds many thousands of people. The Virgin Mary appeared to a peasant, again, always appearing to peasants. There's a message in that. The peasant was Juan Diego was his name. And in that case, it was incredible because she left physical evidence that to this day skeptics cannot explain, and so they stay away from Guadalupe. You see, this is a fellow, Juan Diego, who was passing by kind of a hill, and he heard a female voice calling to him. He looked up and he saw the shining light, and as he approached, there was a woman in this light, and she began to speak to him, later identified as the Virgin Mary, and he was afraid. He wanted to run away from there. She told him to. The next time he came back there, he tried to avoid the hill, but he couldn't on the way to whatever his work was, and saw her again. And at one point, she told him she was going to give him a sign to prove to the bishop that what he saw was true, and to go and explain to the bishop what was occurring. And there were these flowers, roses, that were blooming on the hill, even though it was December. Shouldn't have been blooming there. And he filled his tilma. I guess it's kind of like a robe coming in the front of you. He filled his tilma with it. You kind of folded upwards, and he had the flowers in it. And he went to his bishop to show him what was going on there. And when he went to show the bishop these roses, because bishops are real skeptical, and this bishop was no exception. When Juan Diego went to show his bishop these roses, the roses fell, but on his tilma was an image of the Virgin Mary that is now still at that church on display behind glass, and no scientist, and they've investigated, no scientist can explain what it is. It's no known pigment. It's no known paint. It was inflected in a way that we cannot explain in natural terms, and therefore the scientists stay away from it. And one of the amazing things about it, there's a lot of amazing things about that image, is that in the pupils are silhouettes of various people who had major roles in that apparition.
These miracles are amazing, Michael, aren't they?
They certainly are. And as I said, it's like the Shroud of Turin, Guadalupe. Therefore, what we can't explain, we run from if you're an atheistic scientist. And if your typical atheist scientist had seen a fraction of what I've seen, and your folks have seen, what you have seen, what you have heard, they believe in a hurry, because it's absurd to believe everyone's making all of these stories up, and it's all fantasy and it's all wishful thinking and so forth. The supernatural is real and is becoming more and more real every day as we approach critical events and junctures in human history.
It really is. We're going to come back and take final calls with Michael Brown in just a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back. We're back with Michael Brown, author of Future Events, A Prophecy of Coming Times, and we'll take your calls. Michael, very thorough job with this book, by the way.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And, it's available at Amazon and on our website. I've been doing for 23 years now, a daily kind of supernatural website called spiritdaily.com.
Did you make a shift to the paranormal?
Did I make a shift to paranormal?
Yeah.
I was always kind of interested in it, and I had experiences as a very young kid. I guess what you'd call kind of a near-death experience with asthma. And so it's always been at the back of my mind. But I was, as you mentioned at the onset of the show, a secular journalist, and for many years I was in Manhattan as an author, straightforward, just books about normal things, if you want to call mafia normal, and toxic contamination. But Medjugorje in Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia, is what set me on a permanent course in the direction I'm on right now, the trajectory.
Fantastic. Let's go back to the calls east of the Rockies. AC was with us in Cleveland, Ohio. Welcome, AC.
Hello, George and Michael.
Hello there.
I kind of have two questions here. I'll start off with the first. Michael, you mentioned a second coming. And in Matthew 24, Jesus made it clear his second coming has no arrival on planet Earth. But he also talked about a third coming, and his third coming does have an arrival on Earth, which is preceded by the appearance of what he calls the sign of the Son of Man in Matthew 24, verse 30, in the sky, causing all the tribes of the earth to mourn. Now, it's coincidental, but I have proven on a radio show last Wednesday here in Cleveland that the sign in the sky will be the cross. So my question to you, the first question here, is do you believe in this second coming, which has no arrival on planet Earth, wherein Christians will be rescued from the terrible times and events that are to come?
Well, I guess I go back to what was mentioned in the first hour of the show, the 1990 prophecy, that anonymous locution, if you will. And in it said, putatively from the Lord Jesus, quote, "I will come not as a man of flesh, but like my mother who already nurses me and holds me in her arms, as light and power. I will manifest myself in a series of supernatural events similar to the apparitions, but much more powerful. In other words, my second coming will be different than my first, and like my first, it will be spectacular to many, but also unknown initially to many or disbelieved. Yet truly I tell you, the arrogance of the world will have been broken, and so many more than normal will believe. I will come in towering light." I don't know. That's something to consider anyway.
Let's go back to AC for a second question. Go ahead, AC.
Okay, the second question is also in Matthew 24, or is the second question is this. You mentioned you didn't know the time, or from the visions, you didn't know the time of these events, okay? Now, Jesus said in Matthew 24, "My words shall not pass away," so there would be a preservation of his written words, which we have in the King James Bible. So my question to you is, in Matthew 24, it talks about learn a parable. Jesus said, learn a parable of the fig tree. And when you see the fig tree put forth its leaves, you'll know that summer is nigh, and all the events he talked about in Matthew 24 will be fulfilled. And so my question is, do you see this parable of the fig tree being the nation of Israel, which was formed in 1948, that Isaiah actually prophesied in Isaiah chapter 66, a nation being born in a day, and Israel was born in a day by edict of the United Nations. So how do you see that fig tree as being the nation of Israel and the importance of the nation of Israel in end-time prophecy?
I certainly see the importance of Israel. I also see that there are a lot of fig trees. There are a lot of signs of the times occurring all around us, whether it's in the realm of geopolitical events like what we're seeing in the Middle East right now, or once again with swerves in climate, gyrations in climate, various storms, and then geophysically with earthquakes and volcanoes and so forth. So I think that it's Matthew 24 mentions, which is similar to Luke 21, mentions a panoply of various events that occur. And I think it's right in front of our faces. Fear? No, I don't think fear. I don't think we fear it. But concern and warning, without question.
Let's go to John, truck driving in Ohio, to get you in here. John, go ahead.
Morning, George. Hey, Michael. How you doing this morning?
Good.
I got several questions, and my thing is, some of these older prophets, like Nostradamus and everything, are vague, but the one that really intrigues me is Edgar Casey, because he spoke, and he's a modern man, so he speaks in language we can understand. And he talked a little bit about the Antichrist, but more what you're saying is about the Earth, the earthquakes, the hurricanes, and he said the United States would be split in half because of some major catastrophes. And then he goes on to say that China, which is really weird, because in the 30s when he was there, China would be the global thing where they would run the Earth, but and they would be the economic power and everything. And I'm wondering if that's going to be the mark of the beast, will come from them, but they would fall to Christianity. And then I wonder about the sign you're speaking about that might come. What about an asteroid coming from outside the system, hitting the United States in some area, weakening us, and then others could take advantage of that?
Well, it certainly can happen. I mean, I remember being stunned when I visited the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, and I interviewed the foremost experts on asteroids and comets. And what most stunned me, besides finding out that we've only in recent years discovered that there are asteroids between the planet Earth and the Sun. We didn't even know that much. We thought they were further away. But when I was speaking to the fellow there at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, who was considered the foremost comet expert, I asked him at what point, how many comets are there in our solar system? And he said about 65 million. And I said,
wow,
65 million? I said, how do you come across that figure, or come up with that figure? And he said, it's a sheer guess. We don't know.
Solar system or galaxy?
Solar system.
Wow.
This is between Neptune and then beyond Pluto. You know, there are asteroids the size of Pluto out there. And beyond these, the various belt, the Oort belt and so forth. And then he also mentioned, he said, or it was another astronomer who mentioned to me that the most likely event, if you want to get in the realm of asteroids and comets, is to suddenly wake up one day and see on the news, see on TV, this comet hanging in the sky that has come from the blind side of the sun, that we did not see coming, that we didn't even know existed, because it's a long-term comet from way beyond Pluto, but part of our solar system, and comes winging around. Perhaps it only makes an orbit every 65,000 years or every 65 million years, and there it is hanging in the sky with no one knowing where it's going to go, including whether it's going to crash into the planet.
That's amazing. On the wild card line, Ruth's with us in Maryland. Hey, Ruthie.
Hi, thank you, George and Michael, for taking my call.
Sure.
And Michael, I wanted to ask you what you thought the mark of the beast is going to be, because I haven't heard it mentioned. And do you think it's going to be one of the tattoos that people are getting on their wrist, or the implants that they're getting in their back of their neck? I know a 93-year-old woman that's getting ready to get one next month in the back of her neck. And what do you think the mark of the beast is going to be? Thank you.
Yes, hard to say, but one has to be concerned with how much digits are playing into everyone's technology, and how they'll be able to identify us in various ways with various chips and so forth. Those chips are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I guess you could see that as the mark of the beast. I'm certain this has been talked about on this show many, many times in the past. But clearly, I don't know. Is it a supernatural sign, too, that's recognized by the beast, something that's imprinted from our souls? I guess I have to plead ignorance on what exactly it will be, but I do think that we face a personage of evil who is ready to come onto the scene. And, we look at Scripture, at the Bible, and it doesn't necessarily say the Antichrist. It says Antichrist, plural. So throughout history, there are various Antichrist, again, plural. And I think that we are facing one, and he may even be affecting things right now as we speak. He may be alive and in some type of circulation. I think that the world is not going to end, but it is certainly going to change.
Would you get a chip in your hand, Michael, if they told you to?
I would resist that. I would resist that because it compromises my humanity. It's making us, it's roboticized. It's making us just another tool of computers and so forth. So I think I would greatly resist that.
I would agree with you. Let's go to Neil in Santa Monica, California. Neil, thanks for holding.
Hey, guys. How you doing? Hey, so can you hear me well?
Yes, sir.
Oh, excellent. Okay. So the last time we were talking, it seems like if you want to cut me off, just give me a 30-second warning, because I got some interesting things to say. I believe in a Zen Buddhist philosophy, okay? And I believe that end of times is a very negative belief in many ways. And I stated that the origin in America came basically from the Protestant and Buddhist theology. But over the last 100 years, it's been avariciously capitalized by our politicians and American evangelists. When pandering, to people's fears and hopes, our politicians have displayed a legacy of dispensations, like as using it as a scapegoat, as demagoguery to justify acts of like jingoism, like George Bush with the Iraq War, an axis of evil, or hegemony, which is, taking advantage of other countries, and especially environmental negligence. Like, for example, with the WMDs, and the axis of evil, that was with Bush. But with Reagan, remember James Watt was the Secretary of State, right? And he was quoted, because the Reagan administration relaxed the pollution control standards. And when James Watt was questioned by the reporters about pollution control standards and why he doesn't, why he's reducing pollution control standards, it was quoted. He is quoted to say, "We don't care about future generations. Jesus is coming."
So what do you think of that? We're wrapping things up right now. Michael, go ahead. You have the final word.
Well, I think I agree to that to a great extent, and I do think that a lot of people play off it. But I also believe that it's apparent with everything we see in front of us on the news and even in our lives that major change is afoot, and that more is coming. I think that turning a blind eye to it is not in your best interest. We mentioned that we don't want to be digitalized by too much technology, and we have to be careful with that. I think that we've gone overboard with technology, and we're too identifiable now to powers that be when those powers come into being, and I think that they are coalescing. There's if you will, a concatenation of events and trends that are going to lead to corralling the populace, especially in the wake of major natural disturbances and breakdowns caused by disasters. So I see a big combination between societal events and also events in nature.
Michael, thank you for being on the program, and good luck with everything you do.
Thank you for having me.
The name of the book, Future Events, his website is linked up at coasttocoastam.com. For Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladouceur, Stephanie Smith, Chris Burrows, Tim Banal, George Knapp, and Ian Punnett, I'm George Norrie, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.